Traveling can be an exciting and enriching experience, offering the chance to explore new things. However, it also comes with risks. Unsafe situations can turn into dangerous situations very quickly. While the thrill of discovery makes travel worthwhile, being cautious, prepared, and aware of potential dangers is essential to staying safe and enjoying the journey. A few years ago, I was solo traveling in South Korea after finishing a semester abroad in Japan. I was 21, still pretty naive and carefree. My friends had already flown home, so I figured I'd explore Seoul on my own for a few days before heading back to Japan and then home. I booked a hostel in Gangnam, a safe neighborhood which had good reviews. But I made one big mistake. I booked a mixed dorm. I thought mix meant a blend of people, but when I got there, it was just me sharing a room with 5 men. I told myself it was fine, I was just there to sleep. Most people in hostels are chill anyway, right? For the most part, that turned out to be true. I even went out to dinner with 2 of the guys staying there, and they were really nice. But one of them gave me weird vibes from the very beginning. Something about him just felt off. I tried to brush it off, thinking maybe he was just awkward or shy. I didn't want to judge too quickly, so I stayed friendly but kept my distance. Still, the red flags kept stacking up. Every morning when I got ready and did my makeup at the little vanity table, he would just stand behind me, staring silently through the mirror, not saying anything, just watching me. When I asked if he needed something, he'd always say no and keep watching until I got physically uncomfortable and irritated. He also kept asking me when I planned to shower, even though we had shared but separate bathrooms with stalls. No reason he should be concerned about my schedule. He'd always ask what I was doing each day and wanted to hang out constantly. I politely declined every time. Then one day I randomly ran into him at a subway station nowhere near the hostel. I had just finished a palace, and when I was about to head back, there he was. I played it off, but it made me uneasy because what are the odds? I kept telling myself I was just being paranoid. I didn't want to cause drama, and honestly, I was still dumb and trusting back then. But my last morning was the last straw for me. I woke up early, still half asleep, and drifted back to sleep. The next time I opened my eyes, he was sitting by my bedside, leaning over me, stroking my face and my shoulder. I shot up immediately and was like, "What the hell are you doing?" He didn't give me a real answer, but just mumbled something vague. I felt sick to my stomach. I got up, packed my things, and told him I was checking out. He kept following me around the room, trying to make conversation like nothing had happened. I dropped the friendly act completely and started snapping at him, asking if he wasn't going to pack too, reminding him that his flight wasn't until way later. And then he said, "I really like you." I told him that was inappropriate, considering we'd only known each other for 5 days. He replied, "Sometimes you just know." He kept saying he wanted to meet again, maybe in Europe someday, and tried to get my number. I refused. He pushed. Eventually I gave it to him just to get him to back off, knowing I'd block him anyway. Nothing technically happened, I guess, but I still felt disgusting, and I was furious at myself for being polite for so long. But at the same time, being too firm might have triggered something worse. He felt unpredictable. This was the first and last time I ever stayed in a mixed dorm. I've stayed in female-only dorms ever since, and I've never had an experience like that again, thankfully. It was midsummer in 2024. I lived in a small town in Oregon. In January, I got evicted from my house where I live with my mom and 3 siblings. We struggled to sell the house in the last upcoming days to our eviction and never found a place to stay, so we resorted to living in an RV. It was broken down and unregistered, so we were forced to live inside a storage unit without any proper or running water. My mother and 21-year-old sister was addicted to fentanyl amongst other drugs. We were always accompanied by their druggy friends, which consisted of weird, perverted older men. My mother was in and out of jail constantly for multiple convictions, including theft, hit and run, running somebody over, and so I just always tasked with the fault of looking after the 2 younger children, ages 15 and 9. It was weeks, months of this, the continuous drugs, the withdrawals, the jail bails, the abuse. It got so bad that we didn't have any money for food or water, so the kids spent days starving or surviving off school food, and I relied on asking men online for money where I would go to the nearest gas station and buy food for us. I met this one girl online where she sent me money here and there for food or gas. She was flirtatious and had obvious intentions to get with me. Now I should note that I was also just freshly broken up with my girlfriend of 3 years. She dumped me in January before I went homeless. I was not looking for a relationship. We spent a few weeks talking and she ended up falling for me. She also made it known she was transgender, male to female, no surgery yet. I was a 22-year-old female, so I was not interested. A few weeks in, she was aware of my abusive homeless situation and offered me to come down to Florida and live with her. I was hesitant at first, but was desperate to get out of the said situation. I ended up taking her to her offer, and she bought me plane tickets that day, set for 2 weeks later. I told my family that I was going on a cruise ship vacation for 2 weeks and that I'll be back after. I was not planning on coming back, but my mother would not have let me leave if I said I was not returning. 2 weeks passed and my mom drove me to the airport begging me not to leave. I ignored her beggings. I have never traveled alone or knew how to navigate an airport, but I was desperate to get out of the situation. And desperation made me willing to do things that were potentially dangerous. I navigated the airport and I had a 1-hour flight, and then an 8-hour layover, and then a 6-hour flight right after. Mind you, I'm terrified to the brim of planes and heights. The traveling was awful. I almost missed my last flight as I changed the plane and I was not notified, so I was extremely stressed on top of everything else. I landed at around 1 p.m. in Florida in a black hooded onesie as Oregon was freezing cold. I was met by the intense humid heat of the Florida swamp. I made my way through the airport and this girl was waiting for me at the terminal entrance. She picked me up and swung me around like we were together, and then proceeded to hold my hand all the way to where she parked her car. I was aggravated as I didn't really enjoy this physical touch and the fact that I was nicotine deprived. We got to the car where I yanked my hand away and threw up over the edge of the balcony from motion sickness and jet lag. I lit a cigarette up and took in everything that had happened in the last few weeks. I also had not slept for over a day. I was too terrified to sleep on the plane. The drive home was around 2 hours, and it was the most awkward drive I had ever experienced. She was quiet, and I was going through a lot of mental problems, completely in denial that I was away from my nightmare situation back home. When we got to her town, she insisted that we get food and walk around the ocean pier. I was starving, but was completely exhausted at this point, so I asked if we could just get food and then go home and sleep. She kept making excuses, saying she wanted to give me a tour of beautiful Florida. I was too exhausted to argue, so I went along with it, walking around town in a black onesie in 100-degree weather like a zombie. She was obviously getting annoyed with me as I was in a mood, which I was, but I did mention to her multiple times I just wanted to sleep. We got back to the house where I asked where I was sleeping, and she motioned to a single bed where she also slept. She shared a small RV with another man. We had to share a bed, which was put up as she had cats that would pee on her bedding. I asked her to pull it down, but she kept making more excuses and motioned for us to take a walk around her neighborhood to get me used to the area. Again, I was exhausted. We went walking around where I chain smoked cigarettes and took in the scenery. We got back an hour later and she still refused me of sleep. The entire walk home as well, she was touchy and trying to hold my hand, etc. We got to her truck where I sat in the passenger side and smoked some more. She joined me in chain smoke joints. Hours went by and I ended up bawling my eyes out in front of her, which ended up in her getting annoyed with me, telling me to just go back home. We went on another walk at night. This is going on now over a day without sleep. We got to a little pier again where she was kissing me and holding me. We got home at around 10 p.m. and finally ended up putting the bed down where I fell asleep immediately. Honestly, I can't remember much of the next few days after that, but it consisted of random activities around town and lots of good food. She did not work and relied on her roommate's income. They had a weird relationship where she gets all of his money and he just works and plays video games. She takes care of him. It was weird, trust me. About a week later is when things started to get worse. She was snapping at me over little things, getting jealous over people in my DMs and belittling my trauma, calling my family names. They weren't the best. They were really awful, but that's still something you don't want to hear from random strangers. We played a few games together, which she obviously get ragey at them, which also triggered a traumatic feeling from me. A few more days passed and she informed me that she had a son, who lived with her family as she couldn't take care of him in her current situation. She asked me to come along with her to her family's house and meet everyone, including her son. I told her that it was not a good idea as I didn't want him getting the wrong impression of me, as she was obviously into me and thought of me as her girlfriend. The night after that, we got into yet another argument. This one was the worst. She was yelling at me in the streets where I begged her to take it inside as the neighbors were watching, and I felt embarrassed, but she got more violent. The fight is kind of a blur as I ended up snapping at her, yelling, screaming at her back. I think I had some kind of manic episode. I grabbed my stuff, went to the truck, and called my best friend crying. She told me she would pick me up in the morning, but I couldn't stand staying another night with this girl. So I scrambled up some money and paid for the low-end hotel and Uber. I grabbed my stuff and got into an Uber with this older man. It looked kind of creepy. He dropped me off at the hotel. I walked up to it and checked in. The manager told me that if I noticed anything creepy to report it back to her. I walked to my room where it looked like something out of GTA. Drug deals going on outside, people yelling at each other. I got inside my room from the eye-ogling older men hanging outside and locked it immediately, shoving the chair up against it as well as closing the blinds. I got into bed and plugged my laptop where I watched a movie. It was peaceful and the bed was comfy, but the room was riddled in roaches. I couldn't open my bag as I was afraid of them crawling inside my stuff. Even though there was roaches everywhere, I had the best sleep I had in months, since I got kicked out of my home in my own room, my own privacy. The next morning I was picked up by my best friend and her father, and we drove back to her house where they set me up in their garage. I then had the best month after that as her family treated me amazingly. It was the best month I had in my life. Regarding this, my last interaction with this crazy girl was me going back down there to collect my passport while she kept it from me. Along with taking my phone and going through my Facebook, calling me names through my own messenger, I eventually got all my remaining stuff and never saw her again after that. This happened maybe 8 or 9 years ago, and I was 16. I'm from a small village, and I went to school in the nearest big city. Because public transportation was pretty bad, I lived in a dormitory during the week, in the city where I studied. I stayed in the city during the week and went home on Fridays, then back again on Sundays. I always got off the bus at the main station when I arrived in the city, around 2. My boyfriend, who came from another town, also studied in the city. He came by train. Every Sunday I waited for him at the station for about an hour and a half, and we went to the dormitory together. That day was no different. I was waiting for him sitting upstairs at the station, in a spot where I could see the entire ground floor from above. I had my headphones in and on my phone just sitting there. Out of the corner of my eye, I noticed a homeless woman wandering around. She sometimes stood still and looked around, but I didn't pay much attention. Time passed and I was still sitting with my headphones on. Then I saw the homeless woman start walking in my direction. I still didn't think much of it. When she was about a few feet away from me, I noticed she was talking to other people who were sitting nearby, probably asking for money. A few moments later, she started walking toward me again. I saw her, but I didn't lift my head. She then stopped in front of me. That's when I looked up. She just stared at me, her eyes looking like she was high on something, and she was slightly swaying. She was dirty, honestly, disgusting to look at. Some green liquid was dripping from the corner of her mouth, and her face was dirty. She wore a thick coat, gray pants, black boots, and had a black backpack. She had short brown hair, brown eyes, looked around 40, though she could have been younger. I saw her lips moving. She was talking to me. I took out my headphones and tried to give her my attention. But when I removed my headphones, she went silent, just stared at me. "What? Could you say that again?" I asked her. Then she spoke again, but I didn't understand a single word, just mumbling. She stared at me with those glassy eyes. I shook my head. "Sorry, I can't understand what you're saying," I told her and looked at her. At this point, I felt my heart beat faster. I got scared. I didn't know what she wanted, and something about her made me really uncomfortable. She started mumbling again, and while she mumbled, she began searching for something in her coat pocket with her right hand. I looked down at her to see what she was doing or what she wanted from me, and I looked back up into her eyes and waited for what was going to happen. Then I saw her pull her hand out of her coat, and I looked down at her again. She was still mumbling, and I saw a piece of glass in her hand. She slowly slid it up under her coat to her forearm, holding the sharp end in her palm. It was pretty big and sharp, probably around 15 centimeters. That's when I realized something was very wrong. My eyes widened. I was scared. I asked her one last time, a bit more irritated now. "What do you want from me?" I knew there were people around me. It was a train station in broad daylight, so I didn't think she would actually do anything. Suddenly, she stepped toward me and pushed the glass toward me, toward my neck. I reacted immediately. I jumped up in time, pushed her away, and yelled at her. She started mumbling more angrily. I had no idea what she was saying. My whole body was shaking, and I was terrified. I grabbed my travel bag quickly, all the while keeping my eyes on her. She was still mumbling angrily, holding the glass shard in front of her, staring at me. "Leave me alone," I shouted at her again. And as I rushed off, I saw that everyone at the station was now watching us. I ran outside the station and saw some police officers nearby. I felt relieved. I walked toward them, but I didn't say anything. I knew that if I told them, they'd probably just tell her to leave and that would be it. So I just stayed close to them. A few moments later, I saw the woman come outside too. She was walking in my direction, angrily looking at me. I didn't see the glass in her hand anymore. I grabbed my bag and walked to a different part of the station courtyard where she couldn't see me. I was trembling, scared, and in shock. I never saw her again. A bit later, my boyfriend arrived and I told him what happened. He was surprised and worried too. He told me never to wait for him at the station again, and I didn't. From that point on, I waited for him at the dormitory. Even now, every time I go to that station, I get anxious and stay alert. I still live in that city now, even after finishing school, and I'm still with my boyfriend. Just knowing that could have happened there hadn't I reacted in time, or if I had just ignored her, it still scares me.